Wife cheated and ran away to Sweden with our children. So I used a clever trick to bring her back to us, thinking I would get revenge. But the paternity test revealed that only one child was mine. Looking back on my life, I never imagined it would come to this. I grew up in a small town, the youngest of 3 siblings, always dreaming of a big, happy family of my own. My parents had a loving marriage that stood the test of time, and I believed I would follow in their footsteps. I met Rachel in college. She was vibrant, intelligent, and had a smile that could light up any room. We quickly fell in love and married shortly after graduation. Together, we built a life that seemed perfect from the outside. A beautiful home, 2 adorable children, and careers that were flourishing. Our early years of marriage were filled with joy and adventure. We traveled, hosted dinner parties, and celebrated milestones with our friends and family. Rachel was an attentive and caring mother, and our children adored her. We made plans for the future, discussing everything from vacations to retirement. I was confident that we were on solid ground, that our love was unshakable. But as the years went by, subtle changes began to creep in. Rachel became more distant, spending longer hours away from home and often preoccupied when she was there. I dismissed it as the stress of her demanding job, never suspecting the storm that was brewing beneath the surface. Little did I know that the foundation of my seemingly perfect life was about to crumble, and the trust one had in my wife would be shattered in the most devastating way possible. From the outside, our marriage was the epitome of success. Friends and family often commented on how lucky we were to have found each other. They admired our home, our children, and the seamless way we seemed to navigate life's challenges. Rachel and I were the golden couple, the ones who had it all. I took pride in that image, believing we had something truly special. However, beneath that polished surface, things were starting to shift. Rachel's laughter, once a constant presence in our home, became less frequent. She was always engrossed in her phone, or claimed to be working late more often than not. When she was home, she seemed distant, her mind elsewhere even during family dinners or outings. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to the pressures of work and the hectic nature of raising 2 young children. Despite my efforts to bridge the growing gap between us, Rachel's emotional distance only increased. She became secretive, guarding her phone and becoming defensive when I asked about her day. I told myself that we were simply going through a rough patch, a temporary phase that every marriage experiences. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The cracks in our perfect facade were becoming more pronounced, and I was starting to fear what lay beneath. The first signs of trouble were subtle, almost imperceptible at first. It started with missed calls and unread messages. Rachel would often forget to tell me about plans she made or events she attended. There were nights when she came home late, her excuses vague and unconvincing. I wanted to believe her, to trust that she was just overwhelmed by her responsibilities. But doubt began to creep in. There were moments that hinted at her dissatisfaction. I remember the first time she snapped at me for a minor inconvenience, her frustration boiling over in a way I had never seen before. She seemed restless, always looking for something more, something I couldn't provide. I tried to be supportive, to be the understanding husband who could help her through whatever she was facing. I planned weekend getaways, romantic dinners, and even took on more household responsibilities to ease her burden. Despite my efforts, the distance between us only grew. She would leave early in the morning and return late at night, often without a word. Our conversations became brief and superficial, devoid of the warmth and intimacy we once shared. I felt helpless, watching the woman I loved slip further away from me. My attempts to bridge the gap seemed futile, and the realization that our marriage was in serious trouble began to weigh heavily on my heart. Rachel's behavior became increasingly suspicious, and my unease turned into a gnawing anxiety that I couldn't shake. She was more secretive than ever, often stepping outside to take phone calls and quickly changing the subject if I asked who she was talking to. Her phone, once left casually around the house, was now always in her possession, locked with a passcode I didn't know. I began to notice patterns that I had previously overlooked. Her business trips became more frequent, and there were inconsistencies in her explanations. I started to pay closer attention to her stories, noticing discrepancies and half-truths. There were times when she would come home with a distant look in her eyes, and I couldn't help but wonder where she had really been and with whom. As my suspicions grew, I became more vigilant. I would check her social media for clues, hoping to find something that would confirm or deny my fears. The trust that once formed the bedrock of our relationship was eroding, replaced by a sense of paranoia and doubt. I was desperate to understand what was happening, to find out if my worst fears were true. The feeling that something was seriously wrong became an ever-present shadow over my life, driving me to uncover the truth about my wife and the state of our marriage. The turning point came one night when Rachel arrived home particularly late, her clothes slightly disheveled and her explanation unusually curt. I confronted her, unable to hold back my growing suspicions any longer. I asked her directly if she was seeing someone else. Her initial reaction was anger and defensiveness, but as I pressed on, her facade began to crack. She admitted to the affair, tears streaming down her face. She confessed that it had been going on for years, born out of a sense of boredom and dissatisfaction. She felt trapped in the monotony of our life and sought excitement and validation elsewhere. Her words cut deep, each one a dagger to my heart. I felt a mix of rage, betrayal, and an overwhelming sadness that the woman I had devoted my life to had found solace in someone else's arms. The emotional impact on me was devastating. I struggled to process the depth of her betrayal and the reality that our marriage had been a lie for so long. The image of our perfect life shattered, leaving behind a mess of broken dreams and lost trust. I couldn't fathom how she could do this to us, to our children, to the life we had built together. The revelation marked a turning point not only in our relationship but in my understanding of the person I had shared my life with. The wife I thought I knew had become a stranger, and I was left grappling with the aftermath of her choices. Discovering the full extent of Rachel's affair was a painstaking and heart-wrenching process. After her confession, I needed to know everything: the who, the how, the why. She revealed that her lover was someone I knew, a colleague from her office whom she had often mentioned in passing. The affair had started innocuously enough, with harmless flirting and late-night texts that gradually escalated into secret rendezvous and passionate encounters. Rachel's betrayal spanned over 4 years, a fact that left me reeling. The man she was involved with had attended our family gatherings, celebrated holidays with us, and even played with our children. The depth of their deception was staggering, and I felt like a fool for not seeing the signs sooner. Every memory I revisited seemed tainted by the knowledge of their affair, and I couldn't help but question every moment of our life together. My feelings of betrayal and anger were overwhelming. I was consumed by thoughts of revenge, of making both of them pay for what they had done. I felt an intense rage towards Rachel for her deceit and towards her lover for his role in destroying our family. The emotional toll was immense, leaving me in a constant state of turmoil as I tried to come to terms with the reality of my situation. The discovery of their affair had opened a wound that I wasn't sure would ever heal, and I struggled to find a way to move forward amidst the devastation. Unveiling the full truth of Rachel's affair became an obsession. I needed concrete evidence, something tangible to validate my feelings and provide closure. I started by gathering any scraps of information I could find: old messages, emails, and photos. It was a painstaking process, but each new piece of evidence helped me understand the extent of their betrayal. I found messages that painted a vivid picture of their relationship. They spoke of their secret meetings, shared intimate details, and even discussed plans for a future together. It was clear that their affair wasn't just a fleeting fling but a deep emotional connection that had been nurtured over the years. Reading their words was like a knife to my heart, each message a reminder of how thoroughly I had been deceived. The struggle to come to terms with the truth was immense. I oscillated between periods of intense anger and deep sadness. I felt like I had lost control of my life, that everything I believed in had been a lie. Rachel tried to apologize, to explain herself, but her words felt hollow. The trust that once bound us together was gone, replaced by a chasm of betrayal and hurt. As I pieced together the fragments of their affair, I realized that moving forward would be one of the hardest challenges I had ever faced. The day of our second confrontation was filled with tension and raw emotion. Rachel had been staying with a friend since our last explosive encounter, and now she was standing in our living room, asking to come back. She looked remorseful, her eyes red from crying, but her request felt like another blow to my already shattered heart. She pleaded for forgiveness, saying she had made a terrible mistake and that she wanted to rebuild our life together. She promised to end the affair and to do whatever it took to regain my trust. Her words were desperate, but I couldn't ignore the deep wounds her betrayal had inflicted. The emotional turmoil was overwhelming, and I struggled to keep my composure as she spoke. I told her how deeply she had hurt me and how difficult it would be to ever trust her again. I explained that her actions had fundamentally changed our relationship, and I wasn't sure if we could ever return to what we once had. The conversation was painful, filled with tears and raised voices, but ultimately, I told her I needed time to think. The idea of letting her back into my life felt impossible, yet the thought of moving on without her was equally daunting. As she left, I felt a mix of anger, sorrow, and uncertainty about what the future would hold. The impact of Rachel's affair rippled through every aspect of our lives, affecting not only our family but also our close friends. Our children sensed the tension, asking why their mother wasn't home and why Daddy was always so sad. Explaining the situation to them without revealing the painful details was a delicate and heartbreaking task. I tried to shield them from the worst of it, but the cracks in our family were impossible to hide. Friends and family were shocked by the news. Some offered support and comfort, while others distanced themselves, unsure of how to react to the unfolding drama. I confided in a few close friends, sharing the anguish and betrayal I felt. Their support was a lifeline, helping me navigate the emotional storm. However, the judgment from others who didn't understand the full story added another layer of pain. The affair took a significant toll on my mental and emotional well-being. I found myself consumed by thoughts of Rachel and her lover, replaying conversations and moments over and over in my mind. Sleep became elusive, and when I did manage to rest, nightmares plagued me. The constant stress affected my work, and I struggled to maintain my professional responsibilities. The betrayal had shaken the foundation of my life, leaving me to grapple with a profound sense of loss and confusion. In the aftermath of Rachel's affair and the ensuing revelations, I faced a pivotal decision: whether to attempt reconciliation or to move on and rebuild my life independently. The emotional scars were deep, and the trust that once anchored our relationship was irreparably damaged. After much reflection and counseling, I decided that moving on was the only path forward for me. I began the process of rebuilding my life, focusing on my well-being and my children. I sought therapy to help navigate the complex emotions and to ensure that I could provide a stable environment for my kids. The journey was challenging, marked by moments of doubt and pain, but it also brought growth and a newfound resilience. I reconnected with friends and family, finding support and solace in their presence. To those who might find themselves in a similar situation, my advice is to prioritize your own mental health and self-respect. Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and once it's broken, it's crucial to assess whether it can be rebuilt. Don't be afraid to seek help and take time for yourself. Surround yourself with supportive people who understand and care about your well-being. Most importantly, remember that you deserve a relationship built on honesty and mutual respect, and don't settle for anything less.